You know, Patrick Dixon, the futurologist, says that the human brain can absorb information at the rate of 60,000 words per minute. And that the human eye can scan it at the rate of 6,000 words per minute. And that the human mouth can speak it at 60 words per minute. And he got it wrong about the Irish. Right? We speak at 60,000 words per minute and sometimes think at 60. So if I go too fast, or if you can't understand me, please do let me know. My name is Maurice Duffy, and as Rob says, I'm CEO of Blackswan. And it's a pleasure to talk to you about leadership and about mindsets, which is a topic that I teach, educate and coach lots of the FTSE 100 CEOs around the world. So what do I mean by mindsets? And I'm going to start by just contextualizing this. Mindsets are really important in the way that we look at the world. A lot of individuals focus upon skills, and yes, skills are important. A lot of individuals focus upon competencies, and yes, competencies are important. And a lot of individuals focus upon behaviour, and those are important too. But what we have discovered is that, competence and skill have got very little to do with productivity and output. So if you want highly productive workforce, if you want significant output, right, you need to look beyond competence and skill. And what we're looking for, what we're actually searching for, is attitude and mindset. And if you've got the right attitude and the right mindset with good competencies and good skills, then you have a very effective individual. So I'm going to talk to you about mindsets and some of the mindsets that I've been researching for the last 2 years. And I work with a lot of global leaders, and we coach as an organisation around 400 people per month, right, on mindsets, on new skills, on behaviours. I'm going to try and draw upon some of those research and tell you some of the stories that we have gathered in doing that. Come on in. Now, the world has changed significantly, and leadership has changed significantly. One time I sat on Manpower's corporate board. This is going back a long time ago. And to an extent, when we were looking at the world at that stage, we were saying, how can we see the world in a slightly different way? And I often put up this slide, which is the Ascani tribe in South America. And what they decide every single day is they're going to paint their face to reflect their mood. So they have actually understood one key point, is that we consciously can adopt a mindset. Because if you do not consciously adopt one is subconsciously adopted for you. So let me share with you why I think that. So going back a long time ago, the world has changed a lot since this. When you look at, are you hot enough for Manpower? We wouldn't get away with that right now. But the world has moved on significantly in the way that we look at it. And we've come from a time of plenty, right, where, to an extent, when we look at the economic situation, we had a significant amount of funds to spend. But there is not one single solitary organisation that I go into right now that is not saying, how do I do more with less? And what we've discovered is that Santa Claus doesn't look quite so good in the summer. Right? That Santa Claus, to an extent, in the age of austerity, is not looking quite so good. And what does this mean for us in our world? Well, in order to change, and in order to change your mindset, one of the things that I find about change constantly is that people are always talking about how should other people change. Change is for somebody else. And I'm going to focus quite a lot upon how you change yourself. And in organisations, I get asked, how can you help somebody change? How long does it take? And I'll say, typically 9 months. But for the person, 1 second. If you decide you want to change, then that change will occur. If you have the commitment and the energy to do it. So, we've met the enemy. And the enemy for us is us. We're the ones who stand in the way of change. We're the ones who stand in the way of changing ourselves. It's not anybody else's fault, it's ours. And I'm going to kind of try and talk to you about how you can implement some of that. And this is one of the problems that we have in organisations. Right, is we build these huge monolithic structures, right, which is really difficult to get around and to affect change. And the most effective organisation on innovation right now is Gore, right? It's one of the ones that we actually work with. And what they're desperately trying to do is to take hierarchy out. Take out as much hierarchy as you possibly can. So, what have we got? We've got a surplus education system with a surplus of similar universities educating similar people with similar educational backgrounds, coming up with similar ideas, producing similar things at similar prices and similar quality. And I'm sure Sunderland is completely different from that. But the point that I'm making is that something has to change in order for change to occur. And what I'm hoping to achieve today is to help some of you change, or to give you some ideas on how you can become more effective leaders of organisations. So, we're in a brawl. And as we go through this, we tend to think of organisational conflict, right? But in relation to the marketplace, we are in a brawl right now. And if we do not keep moving forward as organisations, then we will die. And as you go into organisations, if you stand still, if you're not constantly learning, if you're not constantly changing, then you will be left behind. So let me kind of tell you why this is important. In Italy, for 30 years under the bourgeois, they had warfare, terror, murder, bloodshed, and they produced Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and the Renaissance. Out of all of that chaos came greatness. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love, 500 years of peace, right? Calmness. And what did they produce? Right? Cuckoo clocks. Right? So what do you want to be recognised? Great artists or producing cuckoo clocks? So we kind of work through that. So let me kind of say my topic is all about new mindsets for new times. And what I'm going to try and do today with you is just to take you through 10 mindsets. Right? It doesn't mean that you have 10 mindsets, but some of these will be more relevant for you than others. But I'm going to kind of show you why these mindsets are important and how you can go about changing. Now, it's not your attitude, it's your attitude. It is your attitude, not your aptitude, right, that will define your altitude. And what I mean by that is, I get asked a question. Here's a question that I was asked recently. I'm a CFO of a big organisation. And the question goes, I want to be the CEO. And I say to the person, be the CEO. And they said, no, Maurice, you don't understand the question. The question is, I want to be the CEO. And I said, be the CEO. They said, hang on a second. You're not understanding the question. I want to be the CEO. And I said, be the CEO. And you can understand where this line of question is going. And he says, I'm paying you for this. Right? But the point being, until you step into the person you want to be, then it will never become. Until you start acting in the way that you want to act, then it will never happen. What happens is most of us spend our life in a constant search, aspiring to be thinner, to be fitter, to be greater people, to behave in a completely different way. The one change that we need to make in that whole thought process is to start being. Because going back to that example of the CFO, if John behaves like a CEO, acts like a CEO, talks like a CEO, you know when they're looking for the next CEO what to think. That's John. He looks like a CEO, he talks like a CEO, he behaves like a CEO, we should consider him a CEO. Now, of course, there are other things we have to put with that. But the point being is until we step into that zone, it doesn't happen. And this is kind of a slide that I use quite a lot. Is do you know that 80% of the people who use the escalators went on the step machine when they went into the gym? Right? Because we think training and learning is something that we do, and then we think living is something completely different. And they're interlocked. Right? We have to behave in the change that we want to see. So let me kind of take you through, what that change means. The world as we've created is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. We cannot change anything without changing our thinking. And this is what I'm going to try and help you understand. And this goes back to this whole point. I'm sure some of you have seen this. And I'm going to take you below the rock. Right down here to the mindset. Right to the core of what your mindset is all about. If you want to implement and be the person you want to be. And I'll talk to you about why imperfections make you beautiful. It's not about being perfect. In actual fact, there's a Japanese science called wabi-sabi, which some people use as interior design. or wabi-sabi, which says that it's the imperfections that make you beautiful. And I'll show you why that's true. So let me kind of say that part of the problem that I have is I've been teaching leadership training and learning for 20 years. And it's like trying to teach a dog to walk on hind legs. It's really good when they're in the room. But the minute you leave the room, people forget it. So I'm going to ask you just to take 3 messages from what I say. Right, 3 things that are relevant to you. And see if you can apply them. Now, when I was in India, I came across, a couple of elephants that were tied by one leg, right, to a stump of wood in the floor or on the ground. And I was bemused because I was thinking they could just move one leg and they'd break away. What was the importance of that? And what the trainer said is that as they were very young, they were tied to that stump. So in their mind, that's what they do. That's the way they behave. In their minds, they're tied to that particular position and they should stay there. And what I'm going to try and also talk to you about is breaking some of those chains. Releasing yourself from some of the things that hold you back. The mindset is based upon some work that has been actually done. Daniel Kahneman, who I have had the opportunity of sitting with and doing some work with in relation to thinking styles, and Daniel won the Nobel Prize in Psychology, right? And it's a fantastic book. Nicholas Taleb, which Blackswan is named after, again in relation to kind of thinking about new styles. We've had the opportunity of working and studying some of his work. Viktor Frankl, who I kind of studied for a long period of time, but based upon some of this thinking is where I've developed mine. So what am I going to talk about? So I'm going to talk about the two systems in your head, which Daniel Kahneman talks about being system 1 and system 2. And I'm going to share that within our brains, we think we're in control. We think we control our brains. In the way that we sit, in the way that we look, in the way that we interact, in the experiences that we actually have, we think we control it. And I'm going to show you that you don't, but that you can. And in relation to this, I was in the south of France. I have a 5-year-old son. Right? Some of you might be surprised by that. You wouldn't have been there the day I discovered this as well. It was a big surprise to me. Right? But I have a 5-year-old son, and I teach him about leadership, and I was teaching him about mindsets. And we were in the south of France, and he was on the bike. And he was saying it was difficult, and I was saying that's system 1 thinking. What you need to do is to allow system 2 to apply. And he wasn't getting it. 5-year-old, he wasn't getting it. So I says, let me tell you a story. And this is where book 2 actually is now developed. Let me tell you a story about 2 people in your head. One's called Scarab, and one's called Phoenix. And Scarab is system 1. And it's primarily there for kind of 3 purposes. Right? Which I call the 3 Fs. It's there to deal with fight, flight, or freeze. So when you touch something hot, you don't say, oh, that's hot, and take your hand away. When you touch something hot, you're immediately. That's system 1 thinking. Your biases, your prejudices, your experiences drive system 1. What do you think? And it's an immediate and instant response. Right? So we've got Scarab. And then we've got Phoenix. And Phoenix is about the 6 C's, what I call context, consideration, character, competence, connections, and courage. The thinking part of your brain. And I'm going to try and apply some thoughts that will help you in understanding system 2. Now, am I going too fast? Are you still awake? Good, good. I think that was system 1. Let me try and have system 2. Am I having some impact? Do you get this? Yes, good. So let me kind of take you through the system 1, system 2, why I think it's important. Now, if you look at that sign, what do you notice? Who notices anything? You think you can't be fooled. Our brain just reads it, goes, click, I got it. But it misses some stuff along the way. Let me show you a different one. Hands up who thinks this bus is going to the right. Hands up who thinks this bus is going to the right. 1, 2. Hands up who think this bus is going to the left. This bus is moving, guys. So is it going right or left? Let me go again. Hands up who thinks this bus is going to the right. 4. Hands up who think this bus is going to the left. Right? It's going to the right. And guess this. Note this. Over 90% of 4-year-olds get this right. Over 90% of adults get this wrong. Right? Or don't know. Or are confused. And the kid says, but the door is on the other side. Easy. They get it. And I'm going to show you why on innovation and creativity, as a 4-year-old, we were geniuses. We were geniuses as 4-year-olds, and it's still inside us, but we've lost it. Right? Because the world has shaped our thinking. So I'm going to say, like if you read this, again, what a remarkable thing our brain is. It has a huge capacity to be able to read something. The only primary thing that is necessary is that the first letter is in the right place. After that, our brain gets it. After that, our brain can make assumptions and gets it. So our brain is a remarkable piece of technology in the sense of what it can actually do. Let me ask you a different question. Who thinks these lines are straight? 8, 9. Yes, they are straight. Those lines are straight. Right? Even though they look on that picture that they're crooked, they are straight. They are straight, I promise you. Anybody see it moving? Yes. It's not moving, guys. I promise you, it's not a piece of technology. It is not moving. But again, our brains is looking at something and it's expecting to see something, so therefore it is assuming that it is correct. Now what I'm going to ask you to do now for me is I'm going to ask you to look at 4 dots on a picture. Right? For about 45 seconds. Then I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, put your head back, and tell me what you see. Now, I promise nobody's going to jump out and frighten you. Right? There's not going to be any kind of big boogie person who's going to come in and tap you on the shoulder. This is straight up and honest. I just want you to look at this, right? And it's a very international audience, so I'll be bemused as to what this looks like. But look at this and then tell me what you see. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Right, here we go. Look at the 4 dots just above the nose for the next 45 seconds. Just stare at it. Not at me. I know you want to look at me, but not at me, at the dots. Silently. Now close your eyes and put your head back. And you should see a light. And does anybody see anything?
Yeah.
What do you see? Jesus. Right? Right? So, now you know why the Irish see moving statues, right? I taught them. But the moral of the story being is that our brain automatically looks for something to identify with it. So when you have somebody that comes out from an earthquake and they're being interviewed by the news and they say, what was it like? What was it like? They immediately say it was like a car crash. Because that's what our brain relates to. We have never had the experience before. We're constantly looking, searching for something that we can identify with. And that's what happens in every interaction that we have with other people. Our brain is constantly looking, constantly searching for something to identify with. And I'm going to ask you to try and get control of your brain. So as we go through this, right, it's a bit like, we need to kind of say, how do we change our life? Right? How do we move away from that kind of glowing flat screen? How do we move into a more thinking, feeling sort of person? And that's what the next kind of 10 mindsets are going to talk about, is how we achieve that breakthrough. Right? And I'm going to try and help you do that. So this is the book, and I'll be trying to sell it to you later on. so you can judge how good I am based upon the number of books I sell. But I'm going to talk to you about just some of the key elements in that, and what I'm trying to say, and why these, I believe, are important. So let me take the first one, which is around rounding the edges. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, we have to acknowledge our fears. If I hold this can of Coke up, and I hold it out there and I say to you, right, not is it half full or is it half empty? Everybody does that. This is a different story. I'm going to say that. I say, what weight is it? Take a guess. 2 pounds, 5 ounces. Somebody just give me a number. No, it doesn't make any difference. Just give me a number. 1? 1 pound. Okay, is that what you're saying? Yeah, all right, that'll do. 1 pound. So that can of Coke now feels like 1 pound. If I hold that can of Coke for an hour, what is its weight? In exactly the same way. Exactly the same. But how does it feel? Heavy. If I hold it for 4 hours in exactly the same way, how does it feel? Heavier. And if at the end of the day, I'm still standing here with this bloody can of Coke in my hand, it's going to feel really heavy. And that's exactly the same things that we have in our brains with problems. We give them weight. We allow them to dominate. Right? The facts that they're in there, we think about them, we think about them, we think about them. What happens is they expand and they expand and they expand. And they become bigger and bigger. And it's exactly the same thing with our fears. And I'm going to show you how we deal with that. So we've got to acknowledge them. Right? We've got to not park our inhibitions. When I said if you do not consciously adopt a mindset, one is subconsciously adopted for you. We've got to talk about them. We've got to attack the feeling. And we've got to fake it until we make it. And I'm not asking to be disingenuous. What I'm saying is, that point which I said is you've got to step into the zone. You've got to behave in the way you want to think. You've got to think in the way you've got to want to behave. You've got to be the person you want to be. You've got to move into that zone, because if you don't, you will spend your life looking to achieve it. Constantly wandering around thinking, how will I achieve this? So, rounding the edges. And I say to people, are you the wind that blows out a candle, or are you the wind that fans the fire? Right? Because it's a really important point. Are you a person that gives energy to others, or are you what I call a psychic vampire, where you consume energy from others? Right? And that's kind of really important. Now, this is Chad, and I had the great pleasure of meeting Chad, who's employee number 14 in Google. And when you walk into his office, what you'll find is the great and good have been there. Everybody's been there. He didn't put a picture up of me. I was really disappointed by that. You know, Bill Clinton, old guy, somebody young and attractive like me. At least he could have put my picture up. But the point being is he writes a book which is called In Search of Yourself. And it's really important in the sense of what he talks about. And if you get a chance to read the book, it talks about calming your mind, about attending to joy, and about being kind. So I'm going to say to you that when we talk about it, it's about rounding those edges, attacking the feeling. The second point is don't be a turkey. And what do I mean by don't be a turkey? Well, Nicholas Taleb in his book talks about a turkey. You know, when a turkey is born, it has a great life. The farmer is there, it's got somewhere nice to live, it's fed every day, and every extrapolation that it can make about its historic past would tell, my life is good. If I look at my life, it's good. Until the 24th of December, when it loses its head. And the point being is that the past is a place of reference, not a place of residency. And you need to understand the difference between the past and the future, and to get that link right. Because if you're residing and basing it upon what you've done, then you can forget it. If you're coming into work with a CV, and you're going to say to me, this CV is what I've done, I'll say, forget it. There's a lot of thought. I did an interview recently for the Evening Standard on the concept of blind interview, which I think will become more and more prevalent in the marketplace, which is forget the CV. Talk to the person. Have no idea what they've done before. Talk to the person. Get the emotional connection, get the attitudes engaged, understand who the essence of the individual is before you start talking about their skills, or their competencies, or their qualifications. So don't be a turkey, a poor attitude. does not do the body any favours. Smile and the world will smile back. Now I'm going to ask you a question here at the end of this. In fact, I'm going to come right up to the back of the room and I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to ask you to watch this video, right, and tell me how many times, let me go back to the beginning again. I'm going to ask you to watch this video and count how many times the player is wearing the white across the ball. Is it white? Yes. So how many got it? How many? 16. Okay, good. Do you notice anything else? How many noticed the gorilla? And you know, it's really good to be, you feel really good with yourself when you notice the gorilla. How many noticed the background changing? Because you saw the gorilla, I've answered the question. You know, thought, your brain is saying, oh, I got it. I'm going to be really good. I'm going to put my hand up there. He thought he got me. And for those who didn't get it or did get the background, did you notice one of the black top players leaving? Right? And the point again is our brain sees something, identifies something, and makes immediate judgment calls on it. And that's what is actually happening in that. If you look at it again for just a second. You'll see the gorilla. Oh, there's the gorilla. Oh, there you go. See the background changing? And now watch and see the player going. Right? So again, that's kind of one of the important points. And again, it's just understanding what's going on within us. The other point I'd say is that when we look at our lives, you know, there are Jamie Andrew, right, is unbelievable. This is a guy who's from Edinburgh. 15 years ago, he lost his hands and his feet to frostbite in a mountaineering accident. But it also took the life of the person he was climbing with. And he was stuck there for 4 days and nights. 15 years after losing his hands and his feet, he climbed the Matterhorn. Now, how incredible is that? And what it shows is the abilities that we have to do remarkable things. And I'm going to introduce you to some people as we go through the rest of the presentation who have done remarkable things. And when you talk to Jamie, what he will say to you is there are more skillful climbers. Of course there are. There are more people who are able to climb the Matterhorn. Of course there are. There are more people with competencies to do it, with the behaviours to do it, but tell you what makes the difference? It's your attitude. It's your absolute attitude. It's your attitude that makes the difference. So the next one is Hug a Monster. And I love Hug a Monster for a couple of different reasons. It's when we look at fear. Fear has two meanings in kind of psychological terms, but I'm going to show you a number of different meanings. Right? It's let the world come to meet you. And I say, what makes people poor? What makes people poor is pass over opportunities regularly. Pass over opportunities regularly. We're afraid, it's not the right time, not the right situation, whatever else it is, right? Stops us from making those decisions that we know we should, right? Which will change the whole direction of our lives. The second one is eliminate mental paradigms. You know, if you go to Covent Garden, jumping fleas, fantastic. I'll tell you two stories, right? I'll tell you two stories. Do you enjoy the stories better than the slides? Yes? Okay. Two stories. Jumping flea. Don't know whether any of you ever saw this. You know, the flea jumps. If you put a box over it, right, the flea will jump and hit the sides of the box and will hit the top of the box. Of course it will. And after a while, a flea is not stupid. It works out the parameters. It works out where the walls are. And it stops jumping, hitting the walls. If you take the box away then, guess what's sad about it? It'll continue to jump in exactly the same configuration because it doesn't know the walls have gone. And the second story is a group of psychologists brought in 12 monkeys, right, into a room. And they brought in the 12 monkeys, and you can imagine, it's a bit like, when we come into an auditorium. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Haven't seen you for ages. What have you been up to? What have you been studying? Chatter, 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 chatter. And after a while, they had a two-way mirror, but after a while, the monkeys are there and they noticed something in the room. There's a pole. And up at the top of the pole was a bunch of bananas. And the monkeys were chatter, 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 and then one said, hey, bananas, bananas. Right? And they run for the bananas. Up the pole they go. Right? And they turn as the shower comes on. Down comes a big deluge of water. They're soaked. Straight down the pole they go back. Bloody hell, you want to see that? They're all wet. Who was first, who was last? Whatever. And they kind of settle for a while and then think, let's go again. So they go again. Up the pole they go. Water comes on. Down the pole they go back. And after trying it several times, they just give up. They just stop. And they kind of settle into a routine in the room. And after an hour, the psychologist took one monkey out and put a new monkey in. And the new monkey walks into the room, right, shakes hands with everybody, says, great to see you, what you been up to? I've been stuck out there, what have you been doing in here? Oh, bloody hell, the bananas. The bananas. Right? And what happens? It goes for the bananas and the other monkey stops it. You don't want to be going up there. You get all wet. You want to see the shower. Stops it. Now, what they hadn't told the monkeys was the shower had been switched off. And over the course of the next hour, they changed every single monkey in the room that had seen the shower on. And guess what happened? Even with no monkey in the room, having seen the shower come on, they still behaved in the same way, stopping other monkeys from going up. And that's what happens in organisations. We get into a system of thinking. So we have these mental paradigms in our own brains that stop us from doing something. Our mum told us we were no good at maths. Our teacher told us we were no good at art. How many people here could draw a human face? Two? You know the story, Derek. That's it, you've seen the story. Two people. What would you say to me if I said, in the next 5 minutes, I could teach you how to draw a human face? And you'd say, that's difficult. And I'll give you you can do this when you go home. Get a face of somebody, look at it, and you say, I can't draw it. Turn it upside down, and now it's just a set of lines. It's not a human face. Because we've locked into the fact that we cannot paint a human face, because that's what we've been told, or because somebody has taught us that, or because we've tried it and it hasn't failed, doesn't mean we can't draw a human face. It's just our brain telling us. Right? So we have these mental paradigms. Vedanta Teresa, I was in India, and I picked up a 2nd century philosopher who had written kind of words of wisdom. And what I kind of understood and what I took was there were 3 principles on which they had built their whole philosophy, which was around concentration, consistency, and cooperation. And what scared me was we have known this since the 2nd century, but it's important. And yet we fail to implement it again and again and again. And over 70% of change programs fail for one reason, right? That people, right, are irrational in predictable ways. And I'm going to show you, when we get on to the next 1 or 2 slides, how that irrationality manifests itself. Right? And be fearless, not fearful. I met Rebecca Stevens. I do a lot of work with Rebecca Stevens. In 1996, right? And she was working with a program called Tomorrow's World. Probably before many of your time, right? But it's a futuristic technology program. And I was heavily into technology at that time. So I was interviewing her about some of the technology advancements that we were working on and that she was working on. And when I finished the interview, I said, what are you doing next, Rebecca? And she said, I'm climbing Everest. I thought, bloody hell. So you're a climber? And she says, no, I've never climbed. I says, you've always fancied climbing? And she says, no. It's a new addition to me. And I says, what's driven you? She says, I've been out in the base camp in Everest and I've just decided I'm going to climb Everest. 2 years later, she was the first British woman up Everest. And 2 years after that, she was the first British woman up the 7 summits around the world. And I saw Rebecca earlier on this week, and she tells the same story over and over again. And what she says is that when you're on Everest, and you have to make a decision, and those decisions are life or death, if you are fearful, you die. You have to be fearless. And I think there's a learning there for many of us in relation to how we apply ourselves. We have to be fearless. So, be fearless, not fearful. So let me kind of share with you fear. Here are the fears, some of the words that describe fear. Alright? For everything a reason. Fighting ego against reality. Failure expected and received. Which is my best one. Failure expected and received. Because we're afraid, then failure is expected and then it is received. We get what we think. Alright? And the last one, finding excuses and reasons. So our smile has a huge impact. And the way I go back to that energy piece, and I want to show you something, how a smile can just change things. 66% of people changed their behaviour because it was fun. Because it was a fun thing to do. And too often we forget that sense of fun. We forget how we project ourselves in a slightly different way, it will have an impact. So don't bottle it, bin it. So give away that which you want most. And when I talk about it, I talk about R-A-L-T. Most people want R-A-L-T. We seek out R-A-L-T, we demand R-A-L-T. But we don't give it to other people. Which is respect, which is appreciation, which is loyalty, and which is trust. Trust is a fantastic thing. You know, I've done quite a lot of work in kind of just analysing what trust actually means. The mathematical formula for trust is C plus R plus I divided by S plus T. But the reality is that you cannot get trust unless you give trust. And it doesn't mean I trust you and then I'm waiting for it. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. What it means is you have to live it. You have to live it. Right? You have to give it away freely. And remember, you cannot talk yourself out of a problem that you've behaved yourself into. You can only behave yourself out of that problem. And trust is a key part of that. Be the first to give. You know, there's a whole science on how to sell and influence people. There are 6 key priorities, or 6 key things that we need to focus on if we want to get people to sell. You know, we teach sales training at Google, and it's what Google do, which is around reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, and liking and consensus. But I won't go into them, but the key point in relation to that, let me just kind of say one thing if you want to influence somebody. One kind of simple story. If I invite you to lunch, the natural inclination is you'll invite me back. If I give you a book, the natural inclination is you give me something back. That's human behaviour. Our natural inclination is to return the favour. And this goes back to the whole point. If you give trust willingly, people will tend to give it back. But it's much harder to engender it if you're not prepared to do that. So, be the first to give. Listen like a genius. You know, I know a number of people that have done a lot of work with Bill Clinton. And the one thing that they will say again and again and again about him is he is a fantastic communicator. We know this. But they say that when you're talking to him, he consumes you. He gives you huge amounts of attention. Right? And he body listens, that you're the only thing that's important to him. But we don't listen like that. Right? We do not listen. Do you know that the average person 211 times a day looks at their telephone? You know that our first time in picking up the telephone is 7:31 in the morning. Average person. When we put it down is usually around 11:30 at night. But 211 times is the average use pick up and look at a telephone. We are a distracted population, and we've stopped learning how to listen. Focus on value generation, not ego recognition. It's not about the I. And remember, one line is, your ego is not your amigo. It is really important that we understand the difference. A person is a product of their thoughts. What do you think you become? What do you think you become? So, let me kind of say to you that what we think defines us. If you change your thoughts, or if you change your approach, you can change your world. And it's profound. The language that we use has a profound impact. The way that we express ourselves has a profound impact. So we should learn, we should think about how we do that. So change your words, change your world. Next one is we are what we feed. Its critical part is focus upon what you think. Because if you watch your thoughts because they will become your words. Watch your words because they will become your actions. Watch your actions because they will become your habits. Watch your habits because they will become your character, and watch your character because it will define your destiny. Right? Filter out negative thoughts. Change your mind mood. Relax your mind and show your inner self. And too often, we hide and we disguise and we hide behind who we are. Right? And what we want is people to be open with us. But when you're walking down the corridor, let me kind of tell you a story. You're walking down the corridor and you see somebody coming, you're thinking, oh, bloody hell, where's the door? Right? I don't want to talk to them. Right? We all live the story. What we don't know, what we can't see, is the other person is walking down the corridor. And you know what they're thinking? Where's the nearest door? I don't want to talk to them. We only see it from our perspective. We only see the way that we see the world. And we've got to think about that in a slightly different way. We think the way we see the world is the way other people see it, and it's not. So relax your mind and show your inner self. An old Cherokee Indian was sitting beside a fire with his grandson. And he was sharing with his grandson, what the world is all about. And he says, grandson, what we need to understand is that within us, there are two wolves competing. And the first wolf, and they're at war. And the first wolf is all about anger, and it's about envy, and it's about greed, and it's about ego. And it's about me. And the second wolf is all about trust, and it's about respect, and it's about appreciation, and it's about loyalty. Right? But they're in a constant battle. And the grandson thought about it for a while. And he said, Granddad, which wolf will win? And the grandfather said, the one you feed. The one you feed wins. So let me kind of show you. We see the way things, the way our minds have instructed our minds to see. Change your mindset, change your world. And the moral of the story is we are what we sow. We do reap it. The investment that we put in is returned to us. So I've got a kind of decision to make here. I'm slightly behind. Do you want me to keep going or shut up and just kind of get to 4 o'clock? Your choice.
Keep going. Keep going.
Keep going. Yeah? I'm getting some nods. Yep, all right, I'll keep going. I'll get out of here. I might be 10 minutes over. You might have to go. I know, but you're going to miss the best part. Right. See yourself through others' eyes. Understand that other people's are your mirrors. People say things for a reason. Understand that. Right? And remember, when you point your finger, there are 3 fingers pointed back at you. And that's kind of, again, in relation to that, we have this view, which says that it's different. Right? You are more beautiful than you think. And be the person your dog thinks you are. Joke. There's nobody who's going to love you more in this world than your dog. Absolutely true. Your dog loves you, will always love you. The most important person in your life is your dog. And I'll give you a test of this. Tonight, when you go home, if you have a dog, get the dog and your partner and put them in a boot of a car. And when you go out tomorrow morning and you open the boot, which one will like you most? Your dog. Of course it will. I saw this in New York. Be the person. Are you the person your dog thinks you are? So again, you've got to define that. So let me kind of say what this means, because this is really important in the sense of the way that we see ourselves.
I'm a forensic artist. Worked for the San Jose Police Department from 1995 to 2011.
I showed up to a place I'd never been, and there was a guy with a drafting board. We couldn't see them, they couldn't see us.
Tell me about your hair.
I didn't know what he was doing, but then I could tell after several questions that he was drawing me.
Tell me about your chin.
Let me ask the question a different way. What else would you like to know about mindset? Any questions? Sorry? How to change somebody's mindset or how to change your own mindset? The first thing you have to decide is who you are and what you stand for. The second thing that you have to do is understand what you're trying to achieve. And the third thing, which is the most important thing, is you have to step into that mindset. I think we've lost a number of people there. So let me repeat it again for you. I think that you have to step into that mindset. What happens is we spend our life wanting to do something. We keep looking at it like this. We go like this all the way through. And it's always in front of us. And the point which I'm saying to you is that you have to step into that zone. You have to become that person. And of course it's difficult, and of course it's uncomfortable, and of course it feels unnatural. But until you actually do that, right, you're not embedding it in you. And we have some built-in immunities. So there's work that's been done by a couple of people, Keegan and Lahi, right, which is around the immunities that we have built into ourselves. We stop ourselves. Nobody else stops us. We stop ourselves. We stop ourselves from changing. Absolutely, we stop it. And until we begin to understand that, we will never affect real change. Any other question? Yes?
Do you think, like, as a company, could you change people's mindsets and motivate them without giving them financial incentives? Could you change them as a company?
You know, it is a misconception that there's a direct correlation between reward and performance. Of course people want to earn a standard of living. Of course people want to achieve certain goals. But the reality of where we're actually at is that reward and motivation are not intrinsically linked. We do a lot of work on why people leave organisations. And why people leave organisations, managers will say it's because they're not paid enough. But what we find again and again and again is that what people are looking for is challenge, opportunity and growth. Challenge, opportunity and growth. So in coming back to your point, yes, absolutely. And I think that what we're looking for in organisations is that sense of engagement. And what kills the engagement, what absolutely kills the engagement, is their boss. In organisations, when I'm asked, you know, what's the best change programme you've ever seen? And I would say the best change programme I've ever seen is when you fire all the managers. Because they're the ones who get in the way of real change. Because I want control. I want to put processes. I want to be in absolute control of everything that's happened around me. But I want my people to be engaged, and I want them to be open, I want them to be empowered, and I want them to make decisions. But I get in the way of them doing that. And there is a revolution actually happening, where more and more organisations are beginning to identify what we call on-demand hierarchy, which is a whole principle that actually is built upon that. Right? So if you want to lead people, if you want to truly engage individuals, if you want to be the centre of their world, there's only one way to do that. Let them be free. Let them be free from you. Support them from behind, not in front. Encourage them. Motivate them. Help them. Don't tell them. And I can see the best performing organisations, and I work with a lot of really good people, and that's what they have learned to do. Any other question? Yep?
First of all, I'd like to apologize on behalf of everyone here for what happened 2 minutes ago. Second of all, my name is Peter, and I'm a final year business and management student. And I would have a quick question. First of all, sir, regarding to what you said. Do you think all of those things, like implementing this kind of strategy, that could actually work in a potential environment, business environment?
You know, most people would say I have a very good life. And I make a very good living. And I teach and I preach this. So somebody's listening and paying me first. So that piece is obviously, so if you're talking about the reward piece, that's with it. I passionately believe that the worlds that we're moving into, which is called VUCA, which is around volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity, absolutely cannot be controlled, right? Because in a democracy, you cannot apply the rules of feudalism. It doesn't work. Right? But what we're seeing is that change is happening over a period of time. And I absolutely believe that over the next 5 to 10 years, there will be a revolution in the workplace, where we will begin to see that because people are not sitting in buildings, because they're not downstairs from us, because they're not upstairs from us, because they're in different parts of the world, we have to have a different set of management practices. And I worry like hell about the educational system. And if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see I talk about it all the time, that the educational system that we have, that the MBA programs that we run, to an extent, are not freeing up the brains in the way that I would want. Because I would believe that creativity, innovation, arts and humanities are just as important as every other aspect of what we teach.
That's what I was expecting. Another question, sorry, during the whole thing, it's a private question. Myself and my colleagues and workers colleagues, we are going for a lunch after that presentation. Would you care to join?
I've been doing the books.
I understand you're busy, sir, but...
Yeah, I'll be here for a while. You know, if you were saying you're going to the bar, I'm more likely to go. Right? I'm Irish, do you not know that? Right? The bar is going to get me, tracking. But yes, I'll think about that. I just need to see what I'm doing in the book signing. No problem. Thank you for your question. Anything else that I need to... Because I wanted to show you one last thing before I leave. Yes, sorry.
Do you believe that there are any social or environmental factors that completely hinder or block the change in mindset?
Yeah. So, there's a longitudinal survey carried out on 3,000. And what they were trying to do was to understand divergent thinking. And divergent thinking is the primary driver of innovation and creativity. And divergent thinking, for those who don't understand it, means, in simple terms, asking lots of questions, looking at possibilities. It's an open mind. Now, the first thing that they did, piece of analysis that they discovered, was that divergent thinking, in the first piece of analysis, 98% genius level. 5 years later, they went back to the control group, and it was just over 50%. 5 years later, they went back to the control group, right, and it was just over 30%. And 5 years later, they went back to the control group, and it was 25% less than. Now, what I didn't say, the first control group were 4-year-olds. So as 4-year-olds, we are geniuses on divergent thinking. And I say to people, we lose our ability to be creative at about 12 or 13. And why is that? We go into secondary education. Right? And what happens is, you know, those imaginary worlds, the ability to allow our mind to run free, those friends that we have in our brains, well, they'll think you're nuts at secondary school if you start talking about them. And the second thing that happens is that they say, here's the book, chapter 1 to 20, the answer is in chapter 20, don't look, right? Go through it sequentially, right? And don't copy, even though we call that collaboration in work now, right? But don't copy, right? But the reality of the situation is that the educational system is training us out of being innovative and creative. It's hindering us. It's focusing and narrowing our minds. And I'm passionate in the belief that the new world that's necessary in what I call the VUCA world, right, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, the key requirement is innovation and creativity. Now, we get every single organisation that I deal with says we're going to be more innovative. A strategy plan, that's it, fixed. Right? Without understanding the basic point is that in order to change people, in order for the people to actually buy into it, they have to change themselves. And the second point, that they will never change, it will never comply, it will never get to that point until we give them the freedom to act. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, sorry, talking about mindset, is there like a conventional definition of perspective of mindset? I mean, how would you know if you have improved on the right mindset?
Well, Carl Jung's work talks about a fixed or a growth mindset. Have we got a fixed or a growth mindset? Now, I think that's too narrow a definition. Fantastic piece of work, and I use it and we analyse people a lot against it. But the reality is that when we talk about mindsets, for me, what is absolutely true, there's a piece of work done by a guy by the name of Viktor Frankl, right? Fantastic. He was in Nazi concentration camps. And what he became fascinated by is why some people, when they had so little, gave it away. Just gave it away. And he says that you can take away every single human freedom before we die, bar one. There's only one human freedom that cannot be taken away from us by anybody, and that is our attitude to life. We get to choose. We absolutely get to choose. But because we kind of get ourselves constrained or we hold ourselves back, that's what holds us back. So in coming back to it, we're looking at whether it's fixed or whether it's growth. But what I'm fascinated by is the attitude, that emotional attitude. Do you have it? Can you display it? Are you capable of being able to make that move? And I talk to audiences all the time. We were with a couple of hundred last week. I says, I'm only here to change 3 people. The rest of you can go home. I don't care, because you don't want to listen. So therefore, what's the point of me talking? My time is valuable. But I'm only interested in 3 people. Because if I can convince 3 people, to convince 3 people each, to convince 3 people each, to convince 3 people each, by the time I've gone to the factor of 7, I've changed the world. I've changed the world. So I'm fascinated with getting 3 people. Right? Now, I was in China coaching in an Indian company, right, in Dalian recently. Right? So an Indian company run by a Chinese country manager. And I was having exactly the same conversation with her. And she says, I've changed her life. Well, I says, I haven't changed your life. You have. But what I'm really interested in is now you're going to change a lot of other people's lives because you believe it. And if I can get that sense of thinking, then I think I can affect that change. And that's my life. But I want to kind of go past some of this. Because I want to introduce you to a guy that I think has a huge, I can probably say it much more than I can. Right? You can see I've been here all day. Who can say it much more than I can.
I wasn't ready.
That I have my little chicken drumstick here. People freak out when they see me for the first time. It's so cool. I was at a water slide all by myself. Everyone obviously at the bottom of the slide is looking up and waiting for other people to come down, and here I come and they're freaking out. They're like, like this. And I was so tempted to look at myself and go, what happened? There were times where I sort of looked at my life and thinking, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And you keep on concentrating on the things that you wish you had or the things that you wish you didn't have. And you sort of forget what you do have. And there's no point, I believe, in my life where I wish I had arms lengths, I wish I had arms lengths, I wish I had arms lengths, because wishes won't help. But what I've seen in life are just a couple key principles, and the first thing that I've seen is to be thankful. It's hard to be thankful, man. I tell you, when I was 8 years old, I sort of summed up my life and thought, I'm never going to get married, I'm not going to have a job, I'm not going to have a life of purpose. What kind of a husband am I going to be if I can't even hold my wife's hand? It's a lie to think that you're not good enough. It's a lie to think that you're not worth anything.
I can't feel my hands.
I love life. So many people come and say, how come you smile so much? And I'm like, well, it's a long story. But it's very simple at the same time. You see, it's very hard to smile sometimes in life. There are things that happen that you don't know and you don't understand, and you don't know if you're going to get through it. You go through your storms in life and you don't know how long this storm's going to be. And today I want to share with you some principles that I've learned in my life that you can use in yours.
And I'm just going to move to this one because it kind of captures. I want to introduce you to Amy Purdy. And Amy Purdy was 19 when she lost both her legs, both of her kidneys, her spleen, her hearing in her left ear due to bacterial meningitis. Doctors gave her a 2% chance of success. And she decided one thing, and her line is absolutely fantastic. If you are the author of your own life, what do you want the story to be? What do you want the story to be? Because you get to decide. At your age, you definitely get to decide. And what she wanted her story to be was completely different. So she was a snowboarder. Right? So she was the first double amputee to win a bronze medal in the Sochi Olympics, Winter Olympics. And what she said was, isn't it fantastic? I get to choose what size I'm going to be. I get to choose. I get to choose what shoe size. I can pick any shoe size I want to have in the world. And in actual fact, as a snowboarder, my feet never get cold. Now, that's real attitude to life. It's a real attitude to learn. It's a real attitude to be thankful for what you've got, to understand the strengths that you have. Right? But when we think about change, in organisations, there's one fundamental principle that we don't understand. And there's a guy by the name of Craig Winnett that I do a lot of work with, who's the CEO at P&G, and he says you can't change the culture of an organisation. You just can't. And he's going over the top. But what he does mean by that is that you've got to take the strengths that you have and stretch them, and forget about the weaknesses. What we do is we go strengths, weaknesses, how do we minimise or contain the weakness? Forget it. What we've got to do is to look inside ourselves and say, what are the strengths that we've got, and stretch them as much as you possibly can. And that's how you go about changing your mind. Thank you for your time.